I only go grocery shopping once every 3 to 4 weeks. When I'm buying berries, I bring them home and I wash them. You want to use distilled white vinegar that's 5%, and that will kill off any of the mold spores, Listeria, E. coli, or any other harmful pathogens. You lay them out on a towel to dry, and then you put them in a jar with a paper towel. If you are storing fresh raspberries or blackberries, they're going to last at least 2 weeks in the fridge. Strawberries last 3 weeks. Grapes last 4 to 6 weeks. Blueberries last 6 to 8 weeks in the fridge.
My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. On this podcast, I like to talk about simplifying your life so you can live out your priorities. I help you learn how to cook from scratch and decorate on a budget through this podcast and my courses, Simple Sourdough and the Simple Sewing series. I also help people reach their goals from home through my business course, YouTube Success Academy. I will leave links to these resources in the show notes and description box below. Now let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today, we are having on Amy Cross from the Cross Legacy. She came on, I don't know, was it a year ago? I think it was a year ago, possibly 2 years ago. And we talked about saving money on groceries, keeping produce longer. We're going to have that same kind of discussion today. Things have only increased since then, and she has kept the same grocery budget for her family through all of this time. And she has some tips and wisdom to share about that I think you all will very much enjoy. All right, Amy, welcome back on the show. I was looking through our last episode that we did, and it's one of the most popular episodes on this podcast. So I think people really like to hear about saving money on groceries and keeping things and not wasting things. So give a quick introduction for those who don't know you or maybe didn't listen to the last episode or don't follow you on YouTube.
Hi, my name is Amy Cross, and I'm the founder of the Cross Legacy. And it started as an Instagram and a blog, and then moved into a YouTube over the last 3 years. But I started because I was answering questions on social media during the pandemic to other moms that were scared to take their kids to the grocery store, or they were only going to the grocery store like once every 2 weeks, and they weren't having fresh produce in their house because it wouldn't last the 2 weeks. And the first question I had answered was somebody saying that their blueberries only lasted 4 days, and then they couldn't go the other 10 days without having produce in the house. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, my blueberries are over a month old right now in the refrigerator, and blueberries will last like 8 weeks if you wash them and store them properly. And so it ended up like 12 weeks after I started everything, Strawberries in a Jar went viral. I've had a TED Talk because of it. It got shared over 18 million times just in a few days. And I've been in the media all around the world. I now have a best-selling book, Zero Waste Produce Guide. And we have other tips on items like avocados and lettuce and apples and oranges and how to keep them fresh for a really long time, like over a month.
Wow, that's awesome. What an opportunity that, it kind of opened up whenever people realized that they didn't want to get out every day. And then it continues to be useful now, especially for as we're heading into spring and summer. People might be thinking about this with their garden produce that you get overrun with and you want it to last more than just a few weeks into the fall. So I think lots of great information. Let's talk about the most common thing that you get asked about first, and that is berries. Because other than freezing berries, there's a difference, a very big difference between having fresh berries and how they work, and how you put them in yogurt. There's just a lot of things like I'll use frozen for smoothies, but I don't really want to use fresh for that. So it's important to know how to keep them. So let's talk about that. What's the best way to store berries and how long should they last?
So I only go grocery shopping once every 3 to 4 weeks. I try to push it out to 4 weeks. But when I'm buying berries, I bring them home and I wash them. And when you're washing them, you want to use distilled white vinegar that's 5%. And that will kill off any of the mold spores, Listeria, E. coli, or any other harmful pathogens that are on it. And then as we wash them, it's a 1/4 cup of distilled white vinegar to 10 cups of water for 2 minutes. And it's super important that you set a timer for 2 minutes and you don't walk away from them. If I have littles here, I'm having them bounce it in the water, just to keep everybody occupied right there. But you lay them out on a towel to dry, and then you put them in a jar with a paper towel. I'm the one that started this whole strawberries in a jar trend that everybody's been copying and all the things. But if you don't follow the directions exactly, they're not going to last. If you let them soak too long, they're going to start fermenting. And so you don't want to do that. If you add baking soda to the vinegar, that also is going to cause issues for the berries because they neutralize each other and they're not giving the cleaning benefit of it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are storing fresh raspberries or blackberries, they're going to last at least 2 weeks in the fridge. Strawberries last 3 weeks. Grapes last 4 to 6 weeks. They're actually a berry also. And then blueberries last 6 to 8 weeks in the fridge. So since I only go grocery shopping once every 3 to 4 weeks, I'm able to get some of those items like blueberries or grapes, and they will last 2 grocery cycles for us.
Okay. So are you putting this into a big pot or a big bowl, putting the berries down in there and then draining it?
Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
I use a glass bowl because it's pretty.
Yes.
I have a big bowl. You can also use like a stock pot or something, whatever you're using. And then with berries, you want to change out the water every time that you're doing it because it gets so nasty. And then I gently rinse them afterwards. And people don't really think about how careful you need to be with your berries. You don't want to like just slam them into the bowl like they're going to get bruised and they're going to deteriorate quickly. And so if you can be really gentle with them, and then I rinse them off afterwards before I lay them on the towel. You don't need to rinse them off to get the vinegar off of the produce items. So things like cucumbers, I don't rinse. But once you see how dirty that water is, you're going to want to rinse them off.
Okay, that makes sense. What's with the paper towel? I'll say that I get big amounts of cilantro from my Azure Standard order, and they wrapped it in a paper towel. And I was amazed because it lasted all the way until the next order that I had. And it was a really large amount. So why does that work so well?
So in the jar, when you have the paper towel, it's going to collect a little bit of the moisture. If you don't want to use a paper towel, like you're a paper towel household, then you can use a cloth also, but that's going to stain sometimes, especially with like raspberries. And then some places
Yeah.
like Amazon actually sell bamboo towels that are not bleached. So if you're trying to be more organic and not having those, bleached chemicals, you can do that too. But with the cilantro, I actually have some in the fridge from early February. So we are like 8 weeks out right now from when I got it. And that is when you get cilantro or parsley, if you cut the ends off, which opens up the vascular system of the plant so the water keeps sucking up. And I use my Berkey filter. So it's filtered water that I have in the jar with the cilantro and parsley, but it will last 6 to 8 weeks in the refrigerator. You just need to keep making sure that you add more water to it. And we don't really like plastic here. And so I don't, like some people suggest to put a plastic bag over the top of it. I don't need to do that. I just make sure that it keeps the water on in it. And then every like 10 days or so, or when I go to use it, I'll cut a 1/4 inch off of the bottom and it'll keep it alive and it'll keep sucking up more water and they stay fresh forever.
When Luke and I were first married 17 years ago, we were on a super tight budget, and the only way that I could decorate my home and make it my own cozy space was by doing a lot of DIY and sewing. I've shared that for years on my YouTube channel, on this podcast, on my blog, and recently I put all of those resources together, all of the patterns, the tutorials, and then step-by-step instructions from getting a machine and threading it, learning about tension issues and the bobbin, all those things maybe over the years that have scared you away from sewing, into one course that I've called the Simple Sewing Series. If you've wanted to sew but have been intimidated by the process of getting started, or even if you're a more seasoned seamstress or sewist and you want to improve your skills, I really think that this will be a great resource for you. There's also a private community associated with it, so if you have sewing questions or you're excited to meet other people who are also getting started on their sewing journey, that's available with the course as well, and it's for a very affordable price. You can find my new course and all of the resources that go along with it over at bit.ly/simple sewing course. That's bit.ly/simple sewing course, all lowercase. That's where you can find more info and become a student. So how much refrigerator space do you have? I'm sure you get asked this question a lot, but I feel like I would run out with like our jars of milk, and then I put sourdough, I put like a fridge rise and my meat and my eggs, and I run out so darn quickly. Do you have an extra big refrigerator?
So it's a standard depth like counter depth American fridge, like 36 inches counter
Yeah.
depth. It's not very big. When we did this kitchen remodel during the pandemic, my husband did the entire thing. I did wait 9 months to get this refrigerator because appliances, were like on back
Yeah.
order. But I made sure it didn't have the freezer section up in the shelf part
Okay.
of the fridge. So it does give me a little bit more space. But I make sure when I bring items home, even dairy items, like instead of having the big tubs of Greek yogurt from Costco, I transfer those into quart jars with a metal lid, and it'll keep it
Okay.
fresh a couple weeks longer than what it says. So normally like Greek yogurt is 6 weeks out. It will actually push it to like 8 weeks out. But when you're getting items in the fridge that are all similar sizes, it actually saves so much space.
Okay, so that's why you're taking it out of the packaging. Now, does it have to be the gasket lid for that effect to happen with the yogurt?
For yogurt, dairy,
I would
avocados,
assume,
half
yeah.
of the avocado will last in a glass jar, a mason jar with a
Hmm.
metal lid. Onions, when I chop them up, those will also last. Chopped apples will last. Those all have to be a metal lid. And then other items like the berries actually do better with a plastic lid that has a little bit of airflow. So plastic is porous, so a little bit of the
Right.
condensation will come out with the plastic lid. So that's a question I get all of the time that people want to use, like the gray ball lids. And sometimes it works better and sometimes it doesn't. And then the last charts in our book, we have what needs a plastic lid and what needs a metal lid on the jars. So it's really
Okay, based
helpful.
on what needs the air and what doesn't.
Right.
So with like the apples, are you putting like lemon juice or how do you keep diced apples? And then also you mentioned avocados. Let's talk about those things.
So we'll do apples first. But
Okay.
anyways, I am diabetic, so I can only eat half an apple at a time. And it's just my husband and
Okay,
I
so you have to
here now.
store it. Yeah.
So we're not going through the produce like we used to when we had, well, at one time we had 8 here. So now it's
Right.
just
Yeah.
currently the 2 of us. But when you slice up an apple and you store it in a glass, normally a wide mouth pint jar is what I'm using with the metal lid, that will stay fresh like for over a week without oxidizing in the jar. So you don't have to add lemon juice or citric acid or anything to it. And if you get Cosmic Crisp, which are here from Washington, Wazoo designed those, but Cosmic Crisp and Honey Crisp apples also stay white longer. They don't oxidize as quickly. So I kind of prefer those, even though they have a little bit higher sugar content. They're just my favorites.
Yeah.
And then avocados, even if you're not trying to buy organic everything, when you buy organic avocados and organic bananas, they're not sprayed with ethylene, which is a growth ripening hormone. And so even if you don't care about buying organic for most things, those 2 items will actually help you save money because they don't spoil as quickly. And then
Oh,
when you store avocados and lemons together in the crisper drawer, they actually will keep each other fresh for over a month. And so they are produce buddies and they like each other. And so you can keep whole avocados and whole lemons. Well, citrus will last more than a month, but they are produce buddies and they'll keep the lemons fresh for a month. And then as you cut them, if you're only using half of an avocado, then you put it in a glass jar with the metal lid. And then while we're talking about produce buddies, just let me tell you the other ones, but apples, oranges, and bananas hate each other. So you never want to store them in a produce bowl together. They will actually make each other spoil really quickly. So if you can separate those in a bowl or in different parts of your refrigerator, that's like the best thing to do. And if you're trying to ripen an avocado, you can actually put a banana near it, but it will also make the banana ripen super quickly. So you need to be prepared to want to eat that banana right away. And then things like potatoes and onions, when you store those 3 feet apart, they'll last harvest season to harvest season. So when you're storing those near each other, they're going to make each other spoil quicker.
okay.
So
So 3 feet or more.
avocados and lemons together, and then other items, the further apart, the better.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's such little things, but it's important. Now, when you cut your avocado in half, is that when you're keeping it in the glass jar with the metal lid? Because I've never tried that. I usually just put it in a Tupperware, but there's like a little bit of air coming through. And so I think that makes it brown faster.
Yeah, it definitely lasts at least 4 days. 4 days to a week. It just depends on, what size jar you used. If you leave the pit in it and the skin, so if you know that you're going to only use half, then it will actually last a little bit longer. If it's the side that doesn't have the pit or you've already taken the skin off, then it will
Mm-hmm.
last the shorter amount of time. But still, like 4 days to not throw away $4 avocado is amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We usually will go through, at least one, but sometimes it's one and a half. Sometimes you can get left with that random half avocado when not everybody's eating it. And so that's important to know because I find myself storing it fairly regularly enough. I have a little citrus. I'll try to sprinkle that on there. But yeah, I'd rather it not brown at all because yeah, it looks more appetizing. We were talking about the refrigerator earlier and you mentioned not having, I believe you were saying like the side-by-side refrigerator. Is that what you meant? Like, do you have the drawer?
I have a French door, one that opens up, and then there's three
Right.
drawers, like just the normal crisper drawers. And then at the bottom is the freezer that opens. But we
Yeah.
made sure that when we bought this one, the ice is in the door and that ice compartment isn't taking up a huge, area of shelf space inside the refrigerator. And I do have a second fridge in this house that my husband stores drinks in. And during harvest season, I use, but we don't store any groceries in it. So um, I do like to be really honest. We do have two refrigerators. One's like an old apartment kind of refrigerator in the garage, and it doesn't have any groceries in it. It just has like harvest season when I'm canning and stuff. I use that, and then other times of the year, my husband puts his beverages in there. So
Well, I was going to say, so the house we lived in before this, I had a refrigerator and freezer very similar to yours. It had the French doors
mhm.
with the refrigerator and the crisper drawers and then the drawer on the bottom. And now the house we just moved into, it has the freezer on one side, the fridge on the other. And I can't believe how long it took me to realize like the visibility in that. I was constantly finding things in the back of the fridge that we didn't get to that we wasted, which was very unusual because we never throw things away. Like I look in the refrigerator to see what we have, use it up in some capacity. And it happened for several months where I was always forgetting something. And I realized it's the configuration of it to have a fridge that, even though it's the same space, because you have a thin freezer and a thin fridge, but like it's long, it's so much less user friendly. That's just my opinion. So if people are shopping for one, I never noticed this because this was the first time that I had that switch so close together with a large family. There was lots of food going in and out. And it was a very noticeable difference. I don't know if you've found that to be true too.
Yeah, our old fridge was the French door style, the side by side style, and that's why I got this one when we were shopping for refrigerator.
Yes, it made a
But some of
huge
the things that I've
difference.
done in there
I
is
couldn't
I've
believe
put
it.
like acrylic trays, and like most of those baskets, the totes will fit like 6 to 8 jars in it. So then I can pull out the whole drawer, or like we call them salad baskets. So I keep all of like our salad
Okay.
toppings all together, like any kind of chopped up produce. I keep it all together. Or if I'm, defrosting meat, I have a certain area that, I kept it in there. But I remember one time a long time ago with the old fridge, we had 9 bottles of barbecue sauce, like hidden in different areas
That's what I'm
in
saying.
the
Stuff gets
refrigerator.
lost in those
Yeah,
refrigerators. Yes.
it gets lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now well, two things. Now I like really try really hard not to open up like a new sauce until that sauce is gone. And I've learned that if you're buying things, especially on sale, going into like Memorial Day and Labor Day when condiments and stuff are on sale, then you can stock up. But if you stock up and keep them in your pantry, they'll actually last 18 months past that best buy date. So if you're opening them and putting them in the refrigerator, then they're going to spoil quicker. So that way we can still have food security and know that we have the ingredients that we need in the
Just
house.
don't open them.
Oftentimes they're not open yet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We tried to do that too. But I did find 2 ketchups open today. And then we opened a third one. And I'm telling you, I'm blaming the refrigerator, but I'm getting used to it. And I just have to remove things to look behind things, but I can't like see around them in the same way. But yeah, in our new house, definitely never getting a fridge like this because it's not very user friendly, even though it has plenty of space. And I don't know about you, but I prefer more fridge space in the house and less freezer space because I keep a deep freeze, or it's really a upright freezer with all the meat. And then inside the house, I really only need like frozen berries, our ice cream maker, and that's about it. And so I'm like, I just wish this whole thing was fridge just about.
Yeah, we are on kind of the same journey as you have been on for a while. We are getting ready to move to list our house.
Oh,
So we are like boxing up all of our food
oh,
storage and all of
fine.
that kind of stuff and trying to figure it out. And we know where we're moving to, like we know what town we're moving to because that's where our family lives. But it's 4 hours away from where we live now, but we don't know
Okay.
where we're moving. We don't know like when
You
for
just know the
sure we're
town.
moving. Yeah, but we
Uh-huh.
know that like our food storage room needs to be emptied out because we need to finish the floors through the house. And my husband's been on this remodeling project for years in our house,
Uh-huh. And now it has to get
but
finished right now.
it has to get finished, and we're hoping to move this summer, but we don't know if we're moving to town for a little while and then trying to build like our dream
Oh,
house or what's going to
okay.
happen. So we're right there on the
You're
same kind
right,
of
doing
journey.
exactly what I am
Yeah.
doing. Yes. What we
I
were
just
doing
don't have a
last fall.
house. Yeah, I just don't have a house full of kids right now,
Right.
but we are moving closer to our kids. And we were foster parents. So we've had lots of kids in our house over the years. And then the last, um, we had our grandma here since I've been on the podcast last time. So our grandma lived with us for her last chapter of her life,
Okay.
and she was 95. So really
Okay.
being able
Wow.
to know how to learn how to cook for her and, different things. And then we're an allergy family. And then having the foster kids, I've really learned over the years how to, shop on a budget and keep the items that I need in the house. And then I have reflective sympathetic dystrophy. So in the spring and summertime, I'm doing great. But when we go from fall to winter time, like I can have really bad episodes and flare ups. So I've also learned over the years to like batch cook items as I'm cooking dinner. I'm batch cooking more meals. So, instead of making one night's worth of taco meat, I'm making 5 or 6 and putting those in the freezer. So on a harder day, it's really easy to swap those out. And, that's all these things that I've learned how to do is how I've been able to keep $135 grocery budget. And it
Oh,
hasn't
wow.
changed over the years. So per person per month, I spend $135 on groceries. And we're in the Seattle area. So we're like one of the
Okay.
top
That was my next
three. Yeah.
question.
Yeah. We're like one of the top 3 grocery prices in the whole country. So, it's not cheap groceries. We're mostly organic. I normally say that I'm 80% organic. I don't bake bread anymore. That's like, since I became diabetic, I haven't been baking bread because then I want to eat it all the time. So
Yeah.
that's not something I save money on there, but just learning how to have the ingredients in your house that you need. And, those ingredients being really versatile really helps being able to cut down the grocery budget. And then like the tips that I give for batch cooking and being able to pull out these meals on YouTube this year, we have started focusing every 2 weeks. I post all of the meals that we have ate for the previous 2 weeks. So it's kind of fun to see us moving through winter and now coming into spring, like how those meals have rotated and when I have just pulled something out of the freezer and when it's only taken 5 minutes or, when I've spent an hour making something because I want something fancy, and
Right.
it really
Yeah.
helps give my followers an idea of how this budget is really working. And we show all of our grocery hauls. So when I go grocery shopping, it's with the content team. So I don't go
Oh, wow.
and I don't get delivery. I don't anything like I go to Costco once a month.
Okay.
And then I go to our local Fred Meyer's, which is like Kroger and other parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one shopping trip for all of our groceries. And I plan it for 3 weeks. And then at that 3 week mark, I'm kind of like, okay, do I have enough that I can push it off for another week? And then if I do, I try to do it for the 4 weeks. But that mentally saying it's only once a month is not good for me. So saying it's 3 weeks and trying to push it to 4, like really helps us. But this is the same grocery budget we have used when we had 8 here. It
Mm-hmm.
maxed out at 1,000. And then right as the pandemic happened, littles left, and my big kids moved back home, and so we used that same budget. And even with inflation and grandma living here, and now this last year with her being gone, and it's just my husband and I, we are spending $270 a month on groceries. And we eat 99.9% of the meals here at the house. We
Right.
haven't
Yeah.
had takeout at all in 2025 yet. So
Wow.
yeah, so we
Yeah.
haven't had takeout, we haven't had drive-through, we haven't went out to coffee because we're trying to save to move. Like,
Yes. Right.
my
And to
husband,
build
like,
potentially.
yeah, he bribed me that, like, oh, you could get a new couch if we didn't have this going out budget. And I'm like, okay, like if I
I could
don't
do
go out
this.
for this year, we can do this. And it really has motivated me because these couches, I used to be a mortgage broker, and before the market crashed, like in 2007. And so these couches are from when I used to do mortgages. So they're like 18 years old now at
Yeah.
this
So you're ready
point.
to do a little upgrade.
I'm so ready when we move to have that, but it's a little bit of sacrifice. But we have once a month went out for a special occasion with our kids. Each month to go out to eat. But for the most part, like, we're just making meals and prepping and having things here, and then really trying to eat down our food storage too. Which I've kept like our long-term things. Like I have wheat berries and beans and rice, in long-term storage that's going to last a long time. But things in our like working pantry, I've been trying to eat down the last couple months, but it has let me have extra money in our budget because we are doing so many road trips over to the land that we're going to go to, that we're not stopping to get takeout. So I've been buying like fun things like beef jerky and pepperoni sticks and this kind of car snacks that we
Right.
don't normally
Yeah.
get. And so that way we haven't been getting, gas station stops either.
Yes. Yes. That's important. Many years ago, when I was pregnant with my 5th child, I decided to add YouTube to my internet business to diversify and open up a whole world of opportunities. Many things have changed about YouTube since that day. A lot of things, honestly, have remained the same, but I love to educate students on how to create an income from home through YouTube with my YouTube Success Masterclass, which you can find over at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube masterclass, bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube masterclass, all lowercase. There I share the mistakes that I made when I first got started, how you can achieve success faster, and how to earn a diverse and stable income from the YouTube platform. So if you are interested in using video to reach a wider audience for a business you already have, or you're just curious about what it might look like to incorporate YouTube into your life as a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom, go ahead and check out that free masterclass that I put together for you. So this, I'm sure, is a very hot topic on your YouTube channel because everyone's grocery budgets, for the most part, have increased over the last several years. So what have been the shifts that you've made to keep that budget at that same amount, even though some of the groceries have gone up? Or what ingredients are you prioritizing? Are you like filler ingredients, or what are some of your top tips then for actually saving the money on those groceries?
So I like to buy ingredients, and I focus on ingredients, but things that I can use multiple ways. So like I buy Greek yogurt instead of buying sour cream and yogurt, and that way I can use it for both things and it doesn't go to waste. And, focusing on things that you can use a lot of different ways. Like we don't buy crunchy taco shells anymore. I get flour tortillas or corn tortillas will last like 9 months, and
Oh yeah,
flour
they last so long.
tortillas, yeah, you can put it in the freezer and just pull out as you need. But those, tortillas I can use, as quesadillas or breakfast burritos or all kinds of things, where like those crunchy tortillas were going to waste if we
Right, they go
didn't eat the whole
stale.
box. They go stale. So like focusing on those kind of things. I have noticed I used to have a bacon buffer in our freezer because I always had like 6 or 8, things of bacon in there. And now like I have 1 or 2, but I still prioritize, like, I want my Kerrygold butter. I want my
Mm-hmm.
certain items, and, and I make sure I get it. But there's less processed things. Like I don't really buy anything that isn't a single ingredient item. So it's rare that we're buying things that are already, pre-made. Besides bread, I don't make bread right now, but, and then,
Yeah.
like when we have a little bit of pumpkin seeds or different kinds of seeds. Instead of just having a little tiny bit, I'll mix them all up in a jar, and then we'll use those to, have as a salad topping. So those little bits of things aren't going to waste, or, I'm using up little bits to put into protein balls, or, different other ingredients that we're having that has random items in it. Speaking of which, I made some brownies this weekend. They're brownies. They have oatmeal in them that I ground up to be oat flour. They have applesauce, which actually was pears, but it's pear sauce. It's zucchini, eggs,
Right. Yeah.
and then there is cocoa powder in it and a little tiny bit of maple syrup. Like, it's practically a breakfast. There's oatmeal,
Right.
eggs,
Yeah.
zucchini, and they're brownies. Like, they're
Uh-huh.
like practically good for you. And so, just trying to use up those things that you have in the house and repurpose it. And it's kind of fun. I know some people are against it, but it's kind of fun with Chat GPT. Now, once you have like your inventory, you can like put it on a Google Doc and send it to Chat GPT and say, what meals can I make with the
Oh,
food
I've
that I
heard
have?
this.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's so fun. And like the other day when I was trying to use up this applesauce, I was like, what recipe can I put, this applesauce in? And and I have zucchini, and it like popped this brownie recipe that I tweaked and worked around a little bit so it was lower in sugar for me. But it's kind of fun to just go on to Chat GPT and ask it a question and see what it pops up. So I just think that's fun. But just like repurposing things that you have for like snacks, I make like yogurt bark and use up extra little berries and stuff. So that's something that was in the refrigerator that's going into the freezer, and it's going to last longer. And just really trying to, zero waste, zero waste for anything that we have in the house.
Yeah, that's got to be the biggest tip, is just as long as none of it goes to waste, that's going to instantly cut down on your grocery budget. Have there been any things that have gone up a lot in price due to inflation that you've bought less of over the years? Or how have you kept this budget at the exact same? Like, have there been any swaps? Like, okay, now we buy less berries, or and we do more bananas, or we only do in-season foods? Or have there been any swaps as prices have increased?
I think the biggest one, we have backyard chickens, but they're older, and so they don't lay in the wintertime. So we were really noticing it this year. Everybody
The
was
eggs.
that
Yeah.
buys eggs, that I wasn't buying as many. Like, I used to buy them in 5 dozen packages, during the wintertime to get us through. And this year, like, I was getting like 18 a month and just using those only for when I absolutely needed them. And now it's spring and our chickens are laying again.
Right.
And it's spring and the chickens are laying everywhere. So prices are coming down
Yeah.
at the grocery store too. So in the next month or so, we should continue to see the prices drop because the chickens are laying again after so many being destroyed. Eggs definitely was something that we normally have hard boiled eggs all the time in the refrigerator. That's something we definitely didn't have this winter as much. So I think that's the thing that probably affected our budget the most, was not doing that. But we always put money aside every single month and for a meat purchase. So we get our beef, a half a beef. When there was a bunch here at the house, we used to get it once a year. Now that there's only 2 of us, we get it once every 2 years. So out of that $135 grocery budget, that is $270. I put 50 of that aside while the cow is being raised. So last month we actually had a little bit of a buffer because the family that raises the cows hasn't had the new calf yet. And so I had a little bit extra in my budget to spend, but that money goes into a savings account, and that savings account is there for when we do the meat purchase. And that is really amazing. So, everything costs me the same amount. If it's hamburger or steaks, it's the same amount per
same
pound.
per pound. Yes. You just only get so many of them. And so the question is, do you go to the farmer's market when you run out of steak and get more steak, even though it's not time for the beef order,
really
right?
Funny. Steak is always the one that we have the longest. So we're always trying to get rid of the steak at the end of it. Because I like cooking things with hamburger because then I can...
How about you just send me your steak?
Then I can spread it out further, because a steak you only have one night. If I make something with hamburger, I can batch cook it and it can go into the refrigerator.
Oh yeah, no, steak's
Yeah,
a
it's a
one
one
night
night thing.
thing. And the problem is all of our kids love steak. And they're like, well, why do only you and dad get the steak? Which I do share the steak sometimes. But usually it's the sirloin and not the
Yeah.
T-bones, right? Like we do it home date nights. And the problem is I wish that the whole cow was steak and I wish the whole milk jar was cream, but that's
That's
just
just
not
not
how it
how it
works.
works. But, yeah, steaks are always like at the end, we're like, oh, we still have like steaks.
Man, you send me your steak, I'll send you my ground beef. We'll just
But
call
for
it even.
ground beef, so if you're buying it from the store, for ground beef, I'm always adding cauliflower rice to it. I'm adding zucchini to it, depending on what I'm making. My husband didn't even know until I started Instagram that I had been adding cauliflower rice to the ground beef for over 20 years. And then he was watching a reel
Oh
one
man.
time and he was like, what? And I'm like, well, you won't eat all the vegetables. So I sneak them in wherever I can.
I have to sneak them in for you.
But it's so easy to double the size of the meat that you have. So with like ground beef, whatever you're cooking in beef, you can add that many vegetables to it and just make it spread further. So, which is just
Mm-hmm.
great. So like when I'm making taco meat, I'm adding beans and peppers and onions and other things that help stretch that out further. And that's just how my family is used to it. But it's also how I sneak in all those extra things that they might not eat on the side. So I can't really get them to eat a side of
Yeah, and
beans,
definitely
but they'll
cheaper.
eat them, when they're in the meat, because that's how we've always done it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really great. And then it's just funny the things that you kind of sneak into and like my husband will eat something. He's like, okay, now what exactly were in those brownies? Like they were good. I ate them, and now,
You do not
now
need to
you
know.
can
Were
tell
they
me,
good?
And so it's like, okay. But
Uh-huh.
I mentioned the applesauce. I had canned a bunch of pears a few years ago, and I realized that canning pears in quart jars is way too big for us, and we get really bored of them. And
Yeah.
peaches is fine because then I can put it into desserts, but the pears is harder. And so I started making those into like pear sauce, applesauce, and then we're eating it up quicker. So
Mm-hmm.
we had a bunch of jars that were like 4 years old at this point that I want to like start using up. So I've been using that and then as pear sauce and then just adding a little bit of cinnamon. And so that's like something that was in our pantry that we were kind of sick of and didn't really want to eat. And then we were able to repurpose. And then over the years, we also found out that we had a lot of allergies. So when all of my kids are home, it's soy, gluten, dairy, raw sugar cane. And then we have one vegetarian, and then I'm diabetic. So we have
That's
a lot of
challenging.
things that we're
Yeah.
working through. And so I like having
Mm-hmm.
single ingredient items in the pantry because then if something happens or a diet changes, it's really easy to change that out. One of the things is I used to eat like a lot of almonds, and I've realized over the years I'm more sensitive to almonds. And so I can have them occasionally in things, but not like sit down and have almonds or have almond flour. So I
Right.
used to make like cookies with almond flour, and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So if you were to be buying meat from the store, what are the cuts that you would go for budget concerns? Like what's the cheapest meat?
So roast and ground beef is
Mm-hmm.
what I would always go towards because I can just spread that out and use it so many different ways. Like a roast, when I cook a roast, we have the roast for dinner and then I'll slice it and I'll put it in the freezer and then we can pull it back out and have French tips. And then when the French tips are still a little bit left, then I'll put it in minestrone soup. Like you can
Right.
just repurpose it until it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
or we do like with the roast, we'll turn it into fajitas and make
Mm-hmm.
tacos. And, there's so many things that you can do with ground hamburger.
Right.
But the other thing I really like too is like big pork loins. So you can cook that all and just like barely season it, salt, pepper, garlic. And then as I pull it out of the Instapot and I shred it all up, I'll put those into different containers to go into the freezer. And then later I can pull them back out and make them into pulled pork sandwiches or put them on tacos. Or I've been making these farro grain bowls, and we had some shredded pork that was in the freezer with it, and like literally, it took me 5 minutes to make dinner, and we had a really nutritious, healthy Whole Foods dinner.
Right. Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that I really go towards when I'm looking to buy or when I have, things in the freezer to use up.
Yeah, I agree. What are some of your other meals that use up leftovers? When you were saying that, I was thinking about the other night we had just a little bit of meat left from like a few different things. I'm like, we're just going to make nachos because you put it on chips and you hide it under cheese and then a bunch of different, beans and veggies and stuff like that. It disguises it. There's lots of things like that that you can really disguise and reinvent the leftovers. What are some of your favorites?
Um, yeah, when I'm cooking it, I try to divide it instead of it going into the refrigerator and being forgotten about. I'll divide it right there into glass portions and or glass containers and put it into the freezer. But fried rice is another one that you can like
Yeah.
throw pretty much anything in. And then since we're getting closer to Easter, I'm not sure when this will come out, but I always get like our Easter ham. And then when we get done with the ham, I will divide that up and dice it up into small portions. And then those I normally put into smaller containers or like 1 cup portion sizes when I put them in the freezer, because that's really good to add to breakfast burritos or different breakfast items that you're doing, or you can, add them to different casseroles. But like that ham can get spread out so far where it only lasts 4 days in the refrigerator after it's cooked. So really, remembering that, people are sick of eating ham after 2 days, or 3 days.
Right.
And, the same thing for like Thanksgiving. And, anytime I have turkey or chicken, I will dice that up and put it into the freezer. And then we're able to have, chicken pot pies and, different items. Our meals really switch out through the seasons too. And I'm sure yours do too.
Yeah.
So it's really important to me that I know what the inventory is in our refrigerator and our freezer. And so normally at the beginning of the school year and the end of the school year, like May kind of for us, I'm really going through our freezer and making sure if there's anything that like I made like lasagnas, like zucchini lasagnas or any kind of lasagnas, different things that I would put into the oven. I'm making sure that that springtime, spring break to the end of the school year, I'm trying to use those up before it gets too hot and I don't want to turn on my oven in the wintertime. And then again, when we go into like the kids go back to school, we have nice weather here normally until October. Like October sometimes is nicer than July here, but it just depends on rain and stuff. But I'm making sure that if I have like summer kind of things, last year I had a ton of shrimp in the freezer and I don't really use shrimp during the winter time. So that was like something that I was trying to use up and remember to use.
Yeah.
Because I had all this extra shrimp that we had from the end of the summer. But hot dog buns is another one at the end of the summer to like make sure that you use them up if they're in the freezer, that you don't really want them sitting another 6 months in the freezer. So I try to really do that intentionally, as the weather's changing, both
like
those
different
times
seasons.
of the years. Yeah. And then you really have different meals that you're focusing on during different times. And then for meal planning, I hate meal planning. I really do. And
Same.
it's really funny because I have a grocery planner, like a meal planner, but I use it totally opposite of how people would normally use it. So I go and, I'm checking the inventory and it has like a shopping list in it and it has you check your refrigerator, freezer, and pantry for things that need to be used up. So you're like reminding yourself to use up things. But that monthly calendar that's in our grocery planner, I use it backwards. And so at the end of the month or the end of the week, I'll go back and write the meals that we had. And that way I have like 10 years of tracking what meals that we had. And then we can rotate them out seasonally. I can see what my family liked. And another trick that I do to remember to go write it down is I take a picture of my dinner almost every single night, even before I had Instagram. And did it. Yeah. But I've taken pictures and they're all on my Google Photos. So I can look back and say, oh, that spring I was eating this and I really like that. Or I need to make this salad dressing again. Or, all of those kind of things that you kind of forget about. And, so that's a really handy tool too. If you don't want to take the time to meal plan, like just documenting what you have been eating, it will save you time later.
Yes, that's such a valid point because I find that we forget, like we get things that we just love and then we forget that they exist completely. But there was something that like everybody loved. We were in the groove of making them and then we forget. So I think it's good to revisit. We actually had this happen recently where we went back and my kids were looking at my camera roll because they like doing that. And my daughter used to make chocolate eclairs. Not that that's like a big, staple. Like, you got to know how to make eclairs because that's important. But it did remind us, like, oh, those were so good. Why do we not make those anymore? And so the last 2 days, she's made eclairs, But it happens with valuable foods too, not just
Right.
desserts. I was wondering when you were talking about, having to go in and look and see what do we have too much of and pre-portioning. Was it a huge shift for you going from having all these kids at home to almost to the point where like I can't make too much food. I can't buy too much food. There's not going to be a time where it's like, oh no. I mean, very rarely there's certain things that maybe you bought too much of, but I can buy with just reckless abandon and it's not going to go to waste. I wonder what that shift looks like when you go, to be an empty nester after all that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because our algorithm on YouTube has changed. And so I'm 49. We are pushing 50. Our kids are out of the house. And, we're looking forward to that next stage of being grandparents and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
right now, it's just the two of us, and it's been like that for a year. And I still haven't wanted to change our grocery shopping habits. Like, I know going into the grocery store too often, going in for avocado, you end up walking out with a bag full. And now that bag full costs $100
Mm-hmm.
instead of, 50 than it used to cost. But I try to buy things that I know that are going to last. So, and that's the
Right.
same
Yeah.
kind of thing, just different proportions. So like in the fall time, apples, I used to get bushels of apples and now I
Right.
will get,
Yes. Yeah.
25 pounds instead of 100 pounds of them, which will stay fresh in the winter, in our garage all winter. And then citrus that's fall time. Citrus in the winter time, lasts for months and that's when it's harvested. And then going into a summer and into fall, watermelons actually last a really long time. So you can actually keep a watermelon in your pantry for like weeks. So we normally get one in August and it'll last like until late into September. So those are like fresh food security items that people don't think about that you can have, and they don't necessarily need to be in your refrigerator all the time. Like if you have fridge space, it's great. But if you don't, but teaching your family that there might not always be that
Mm-hmm.
certain berry that you want, but there's
Yeah.
always fruit in the house, and being able to do that. But right now, I am honestly so sick of strawberries. We had strawberries in our house every single
Strawberry
month
in a
for 3
jar.
years because I
Yes.
felt like I always had to show people fresh strawberries in the jar, and like literally, like I was so sick of them because we
Right.
normally would
But
not buy them in the wintertime. And so having that same fruit all of the time was just, so hard. And then we try not to waste anything. So we were
you eat it.
eating
Yeah, you
strawberry
ate them.
smoothies, and so we eat
Yes.
them. But, having different kinds of berries and being able to rotate them and them lasting so long, then, you don't have to stress about having to eat them up. But really, our algorithm on YouTube changing has been really interesting. So it used to be where I was talking more to young moms, and that's really my heart. Like I talk to a lot of MOPS groups and
Mm-hmm.
different things, trying to lead up that next generation. Like that's the calling of my heart. But I was on Mary's Nest about a year ago, and she's older than me, which is great. Like I love learning from all the different generations, but it kind of switched our algorithm a little bit because her followers are a little bit older too, but they watch longer videos. Like 30-year-olds will
Maybe
only
they have
watch
more
2-minute
time.
videos and 65-year-olds will watch longer videos. So, it's really helped me out,
Okay. Yeah.
but being able to help empty nesters or college age parents like we are, or, parents where, our kids are home in the summertime and they're gone again and you have to constantly be switching,
Yeah.
you're
How you do
thinking about
things.
things. And then I have a lot of followers now that are on Social Security and are widowed
Mm-hmm.
and, trying to buy groceries and wanting to have like fresh produce in their house, but worried about buying too much and it spoiling. So I've been getting this whole new generation of followers. And I think it's been kind of neat because, grandma was living with us. So I think some of them came to watch some of grandma's content when she was
Uh-huh.
on videos with us before she passed away. But it's just been really neat because my heart has always been to make a generational change. And I thought that was with the littles, our name is the Cross Legacy. That's our family motto, and it has been for 27 years. And that's why we named everything the Cross Legacy. But it's neat to see that I'm reaching the older generation and helping the older generation than me too. And so it just, this whole thing that has happened has just been so amazing. I call it ministry to me, to be able to help all of these moms and families, across the world, and actually have hope again in the kitchen, and be able to prioritize what that 80-20% is of wanting
Yeah.
to have wholesome food and what's okay to you know splurge on, or
Right.
whatever your choices are for your family that you're making. But it doesn't have to be stressful, and you don't have to cook 3 meals every single day to have really nutritious meals in your house.
Yes. Absolutely. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we all have budgets to stay within. And if it doesn't allow for organic, I think that's a place where people feel really guilty, and it doesn't always have to, be that way. And so I like that you also teach where to prioritize that, where to prioritize with your budget, how to make sure that none of it goes to waste. So tell the listeners where to best find you. You've mentioned your YouTube, The Cross Legacy. Where else should they follow along?
So we're reaching 5 million people a month on Instagram, which is just
Nice.
crazy.
Yeah.
So we are posting those short little clips on Instagram that are going viral and all of the things to save money
Uh-huh.
on groceries. I kind of tease that Instagram is my mailing list. I really do have a mailing list, but that's where I normally put, anything new that's happening, exciting. But we are putting out 3 videos a week right now on YouTube. So I'm
Wow.
really trying to go through all the produce items and teach people tips on those and how to grocery shop. We do all of our grocery hauls. And then I'm doing all of the meals that I'm making and recipe videos. There's so much that's going out, but we went from the first year we put out 1 video, and then we pushed it to 2. And now we're like, can we do one every 3 days? So for the
Wow.
last couple months, we've been putting out one every 3 days, which is just really cool. And then, so I am the Cross Legacy on all social media and .com. And then my book is called The Zero Waste Produce Guide, and that's available on our website. And that has 75 produce items from A to Z. And so they're
Okay.
all listed out, and there's 40 other meal ideas, recipes, like ways to use up produce, what freezes easy, how to organize your fridge. It's packed with information.
Mm.
And I will say it is a little costly. It's a little bit more expensive than what you would normally buy for a book. We spent 2 years designing this book, and it's a full color hardcover book, but it's printed in the United States. And I'm a small business, so I'm only able to order 100 or 200 books at a time. So for me, the cost is higher. But
Right.
for your
Yeah. Yeah.
listeners, we have a special discount code that is Farmhouse15 to get it at a discount when you're getting it. And it's on Amazon also. So on our website, it has the discount code, or if you want to buy through Amazon, then it has a free shipping for Prime. So it kind of depends on which way is better for you. But we send out every single one of those packages, and we just cherish knowing that we can help shape other lives with this book that we worked so hard on and we're so proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if people can not waste food because of it, then ultimately the cost will definitely pay for itself. So I think I like the idea too that you show how to organize the refrigerator, because that was a question we got that we didn't really touch on. And a lot of these things, it's hypothetical. It's like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do this. But it's nice that over on your YouTube channel too, you actually show how the groceries turn into meals and what that exactly looks like. So I think that that's a real helpful resource.
When I had a TED Talk, and when I was studying for my TED Talk and doing all the research, I found out that the average family in the United States is throwing away over 40% of what they're buying.
I've heard that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
is this
So
true? Because
one
we don't throw
organization,
away food, but it's, we
others
don't, I
do.
don't know.
one organization actually said it was 61% for household food waste, but the average family, like college age parents, like are spending like somebody my age with grown and flown kids are spending around $1,000 a month on groceries, and which is really crazy. But they're going to the grocery store all of the time. They're like trying
Hmm.
to learn how to recook, smaller meals, or feeling like they're having to cook all the time. And if you're wasting 60% of that, they're throwing away $600. If they're wasting
Yeah.
40% of that, they're throwing away $400. And when you really
That's,
think
yeah.
about, the berries or the wilted lettuce or the spinach, like spinach will last for a month in the refrigerator. Like you don't have to throw away your produce items, but you think about the items in your pantry that are going stale or you're bored of, or the things in your freezer that you just let get freezer burned. You can really see how an average family that's not a homesteader, that wasn't raised this way, is throwing away so much because they just continually buy, and they buy what they think that they're going to make for meals without looking at what's
At
actually,
what they have.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
refrigerator. And so, that's something else I get asked all the time. Like, I work a lot with like food banks and stuff too, and lower income families. And, I have $50 and I need to make it last, for 10 days, and I need 10 dinners. And, what cheap and easy meals can I make? And it's like, okay, what is in your house? Like, send me a picture of your
What do you
refrigerator,
have?
like, what do you have? And it's like,
Hmm.
once you know what you have, then okay, then you can use this and this and go buy this one item and make this meal, but the
Right.
mindset
Yes.
is just totally backwards. It's just like, oh, I
Yep.
need to go into the grocery store and buy all of these things and not even think about, well, I could use this instead and substitute that, and
Uh-huh.
so those are the kind of things that I'm really trying to teach on my YouTube channel, is things that you can swap out and do different and use up. And, and it could be smaller or it can be larger, and, either way, but, really trying to have people afford groceries again. And at
Uh-huh.
one time we were working 5 jobs between my husband and I. Like, we both had main jobs, we were raising our kids, and then we had all these side hustles, and we had canceled everything. Like, there was no
Yeah. There was
cable, there
nothing
was no
else to cut.
extras, there was no anything. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was our grocery budget. Like, our grocery
It's a
budget was out
huge
of control.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was out of control. My husband was stopping all the time to pick up this or that. And then, extra things. And, we were so busy, we weren't taking the time to actually see what we had. And when I started getting that under control, and at first it was like, oh, can we go 2 days without going to the grocery store? And then it was 3 days
Wow,
without
you've
going to
really
the grocery
stretched that
store.
out.
We really stretched it out because we
Yeah.
want to move to a farm someday. I can actually see grocery stores from my house. So not
Wow. So
walking
it's not
over
for
to,
convenience sake that you're going once a month. It's
no,
for
it's budget.
having a
It's
tight handle on this budget, and also like cooking through what you have because you have to. Like, that's another thing we were talking about earlier, like seeing things in the back of the freezer. Well, if you would just wait a little longer and scrape together everything before going again, then nothing can go to waste.
right. And we do that with all of our fresh items. We're trying to do that in our pantry so things aren't going to waste. But we do have food security in our house, and I think that's really important too. Like, we do have long-term food security that I have purchased, one bag of beans at a time, one bag of rice at a time, and use that grocery budget. But, if there was a time in our lives where we couldn't go to the grocery store, or grocery store
You'd be
shelves were
good.
empty, or all those things that our great grandmas taught us about that we forgot until the pandemic happened,
Right.
we do, we do have the ingredients and the supplies in our house that are long-term food storage
Yes.
that I
Yes. We
have
do the same
built
thing.
over the years. But, some people hear, oh, I need to use everything up before I go to the store. Like,
Not like rice and beans. I just mean
no,
there's just like
yeah.
stuff in the bottom of the produce drawer that it's like, well, you could, grab
Yeah.
that potato, wash it, and,
No,
yeah.
no, people will send me pictures of like, I'm a minimalist and I only want to have this much in the house and that kind of stuff. And I do believe in having food security and that bringing peace.
Oh,
And,
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
and over the years we have, small, done that in little tiny increments. And now we have it. And I was joking the other day that like those wheat berries aren't going to expire until I'm 75. So,
Yeah, don't worry about that.
I'm
Don't worry
good.
about your oils, like your olive oils, your wheat berries, I will keep buying those because I do not want to ever see a day where I run out of them. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will leave links below for all the resources you mentioned. I really think people should go check you out on YouTube so they can see how this all, like if you're still struggling with how it actually looks, then those 3 videos a week with you grocery shopping, putting the meals together, that sounds like a really helpful application. So, well, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. Lots of things I've learned as well.
Well, it's so exciting to get to talk to you again. And you just don't even know how much you've changed our lives over the years. So I wouldn't have a blog. I wouldn't have a YouTube channel if it wasn't for you and your courses. And it's just really neat to be able to have discussions with you after following you since forever. Like when you were talking about Dave Ramsey back in the old farmhouse,
Yes. 2 houses ago.
Yeah, that's like the first video I watched, a bunch of kids ago.
Right. Yes.
But, yeah, it's really neat to get to talk to somebody you look up to so much and know that you're helping change families' lives.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, as always, for listening to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. My husband Luke and I and our 8 kids work together side by side on our little homestead and use our blog, podcast, and YouTube channel to reach other homemakers, home cooks, and homesteaders with practical recipes in daily family life. For everyday sourdough recipes, make sure to check out our blog, farmhousehomeboon.com, and to dig deeper, we do also offer a course called Simple Sourdough over at bit.ly/farmhouse sourdough course. That's all one word, bit.ly/farmhouse sourdough course. If you're looking to learn how we earn an income online, check out my YouTube course at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube course, all one word.